Hi, I'm Ryan North.
I'm Lori Fungi.
And I'm Shawn Wilson. You're listening to Foster Family Matters, a production of CK Family Services, people united through God to enhance the physical, emotional, and spiritual well-being of at-risk children and families. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us again for Foster Family Matters. We are super excited for this little project that we're kicking off. This will be the first episode that we do in our several episode series where we're taking a look at the book, The Whole Brain Child. And this is a book that we value ourselves in our own parenting experience. We utilize this book to draw from in educating and supporting those that are foster parenting and caring for kiddos they've adopted. And we just think it's a wealth of knowledge. We hope that you'll benefit. If you're listening to this kind of after the fact, and of course these episodes will persist as long as the internet lives on, but feel free to, kind of our idea in this is that you might engage in this content and this particular podcast in sort of a book club type fashion with folks that you're in community with in a real tangible way. Maybe that's a Sunday school class or a mom support group or a dad's breakfast club or I don't know, whatever sort of community that you're operating within. And if you don't have community and you'd like to join along with us, our Facebook group would be a perfect place to do that at. And you can find that on Facebook. The name of the group is Foster Family Matters, just like the show. And you do have to request membership, but we're pretty open with allowing folks in. So that's kind of the preface for this. I'm going to pitch it over to, I think, Lori.
Yeah.
And we'll get started here. I think we're going to, so for this episode.
So you're not taking comments on your introduction this time, just to dive right into the content?
I am. I'm just going straight in here,
me.
right?
I had some good material. Sorry, it'll never see the light of day.
Hold on. Let me check my notes. No, it says Shawn, Lori.
Oh. That's my bad.
If only it was that scripted.
That's it. That's what you get when you don't email them to me.
You didn't get the memo.
But actually, I guess let me say just a couple of more things. I think there's a lot of opportunity for folks to utilize this sort of content, and we're kind of stabbing in the dark a little bit here. We play professionals on TV, but we're real people who are fallible, and so be interactive with us as this content is coming out. If there's things that you'd like to see different, we're open to feedback. But for today's episode, we're going to try to start with our introduction and chapter 1, and then we're hopeful to work our way through chapter 2, get into a couple of the initial strategies, and we're going to kind of take the premise that you've already read this material, and you're kind of joining alongside us in discussion about it. So if you have not, pause this episode. This is the only time I'll ever tell you, wait, throw the brakes on, don't listen to this episode just yet. Pause, go get the book. You can pick it up in a link that we'll provide you, and Amazon will get it to you in like 24 hours or something like that.
I think that's the thing now.
Maybe even same day.
Maybe.
Or you have to use your Kindle, you can get it instantly.
True story.
People go to bookstores anymore? I guess you could get it
bookstore?
instantly
I do.
that way.
Hey, easy.
The B&N?
Easy.
What's
Is
a
the B&N
bookstore?
still in?
Don't talk bad
What's a
about
B&N?
books.
Can we get eggs in the morning?
Barnes & Noble.
Oh, I know.
Do you remember Dalton's?
Oh, yeah.
I don't feel like this episode's going to be 20 minutes long with this stroll down memory
We've had a
lane.
20-minute intro. Okay, so Lori,
Yeah.
Whole brain child, good.
Without further ado.
Let me recenter us. What I love about this book is that it's really, really applicable. And you probably heard us say that. And so I'm just going to keep repeating that it doesn't have to, it's not geared towards kiddos that come from the system into your home. It can really be helpful for any child that you interact with. But I think I can speak on Ryan and Shawn's behalf that our hope for you is from a quote that I'm going to use. Tina and Dan just did a much more brilliant job of saying it than I think I could. But I love this line in one of the first pages. It's actually on page 4. What you do as a parent matters and will provide you with straightforward, scientifically based ideas that will help you build a strong relationship with your child that can help shape his brain well and give him the best foundation for a healthy and happy life. And I think that just sets the tone for what our hope and prayers in our time with you, that we can provide you a little bit of humor at times and some levity, as well as practical tips and tools to help strengthen and nurture your connection and relationship with your kiddo.
Yeah, that's a really great thing that you said there. And honestly, if we really want to do this book service, we should probably just read it. Like you tune in and listen to us read
It's
it.
just the audiobook by us.
That's right.
It works better with his
I
accent than
don't
it
know.
would for either Shawn or I believe.
Yeah, I don't know where the copyright rules land on that one.
What's copyright? No, I'm kidding. No, I get that. I will say about this book that that Dan Siegel is one of the smartest people I've ever encountered
Amen.
in my whole life, and Tina too. I mean,
She's brilliant.
She's brilliant lady, but she has something that Dan doesn't have, and that is her ability to sort of speak like in the common vernacular.
Yes.
Like sometimes he's like, man, I struggle to finish a sentence with that guy. But when you put the two of them together, this book is spectacular. We talked about this in the previous episode, how Emma and I go through it once a year plan now, because there's so much right in it. So I'm going to read you one of my favorite quotes here right at the beginning, page 6. One part of your brain is devoted to dealing with memory, another part to making moral and ethical decisions. It's almost as if your brain has multiple personalities, some rational, some irrational, some reflective, some reactive. No wonder we can seem like different people at different times. And I think that it's a little wordy for a T-shirt, but I think I want it on a T-shirt, right?
You could put it on a travel mug.
Or like maybe have put on a T-shirt for my wife so I can actually read it and like, oh yes, that's what I need to remember.
There's my reminder.
Like everything I need to remember, I'm gonna put on a T-shirt for
Brilliant.
my spouse.
Honey, walk ahead of me.
Why? Yeah.
Print it front and back just to be safe.
I was going in a certain direction, and filters they work.
But I think in the intro of this book, there's a lot of things to remember. Like I think that's really great to remember. They talk about how we've now discovered in neuroscience and now discovered in the last decade or so that the brain's actually malleable, that we can actually change the way you think about things, the way you process things, the whole Hebbian principle, firing and wiring, and how experiences can change your brain. Because until like the 21st century, people just thought, once you got out of, we didn't even understand that you had to be 25 or 30 before your brain was actually developed, right?
Right, that plasticity.
Yeah, like I think like my son just got his driver's license. He's 16, and I'm like, man, you should drive with a motorcycle helmet on or something.
Like inside the car.
Well, yes, while your
And
brain.
bubble wrap?
Yes,
Yeah.
no, I'm okay with that. We need to protect the brain that's still
Bubble wrap
growing,
is
right?
a little ridiculous. We'll stick with the motorcycle
Okay.
helmet
Seriously, Lori. Or maybe a bicycle helmet, right?
and leathers, full
And
leathers.
leathers and boots.
Yes.
Right? Right? We just
And a
assume-
bodyguard.
And a bodyguard.
Wow.
Who's holding bubble and bubble wrap the helmet
Thank
holding
you.
bubble wrap.
Thank you.
over the helmet. Right? I mean, we just had that's a really great thing to remember, because I know the book's called The Whole Brain Child, but that gives me as an adult hope too.
Right.
That my brain can change. And so if you go with like your more traditional parenting or parenting the way you were parented, that does not have to be the reason you parent the way you do. People can change, and that's why I love this book for everybody, because to me it's not just these strategies of integrating left, right, upstairs, downstairs, and all those kinds of things that we're going to talk about. But it is to me, it's like it gives me a little bit of hope that I can change. And I think that's one of my favorite messages of the book.
Well, and what this does for me is that for those of you that know me, I'm a complete nerd and fanatic when it comes to the brain. It fascinates me. I hunger for more information. I want to stay on top of the latest and greatest research about it, because it's ever changing and ever evolving, and we're learning more and more in time about the brain. That doesn't mean a large majority of you are like that as well. It may be you hear brain and you hear that dun, 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 because it is so complex, because it feels foreign, that we just don't know that much about it. And so this book takes something that can be really complex, I think, to many of us, and it makes it simple. It's not simplistic. This book is by no means simplistic, but it does simplify strategies and techniques. It simplifies words like neurotypical and neurological tenets and neurological functioning and neurological architect, and it puts it in words of, this is how you parent to help your child's brain grow, and when you do it this way, your brain grows as well. And to me, that serve and return, that give and take is what's so powerful, because that's the framework of relationships. And if we step away from that, I really don't know what we're doing in life, period.
Right.
I love the illustrations in this book.
Yes.
They're just kind of fun. On page 12, there's the chaos. The mom's in a rowboat in the middle of this river. On one bank is chaos, and what I really love is they introduced this idea earlier that on the other bank is not calm.
Right.
There's rigidity, right? The calm is in between the chaos and the rigidity, and I think that we. Again, I'd start things with I think that we, but really have to say, in the past I have, if that's more honest, right, have felt that there's chaos or calm. But I have confused rigidity and control with calm in my house, right? Because again, we say this every episode, the point of parenting is not to be a seeker of compliance, which I spent the long, I should say every episode, hi, my name's Ryan, I'm a recovering compliance seeker. Because that hasn't helped anything in my home. It certainly did not lead us to a place of calm. And, we have 6 children, 2 dogs. My wife and I are both have many words that we try to get at every day. And we also can be high volume speakers. I don't mean yelling. I mean like we're just loud naturally. My home is, sometimes I'll just look at my wife and go, I'm actually surprised at how calm my home is right now. Because you can get to that place, but you have to navigate those extremes instead of bouncing between the 2 extremes. So I do love that we try to control things, we become rigid, but really flexibility is our friend in a lot of these situations.
Absolutely. And that particular illustration applies across the board, right?
Yep.
It's not just our own experiences in that, but it's
That's
our
right.
children's experiences, because they're also in a boat in the same stream that we're in. And they're constantly going back and forth like this, which makes it that much more important that we try to stay the middle course so that we can show them the way.
Yeah, mentor them. Yep.
That's right.
I love in the book they actually call them little canoes. they're in their own little canoes.
Little canoe.
Canoe's a funny word. I
It
know it
is
has
a
nothing
funny
to do with
word.
anything. I just think canoe's a funny word.
Maybe we should do a canoe episode.
Or a kayak? Should we?
Well, that's better, because canoe sounds like it should be spelled K-A-N-U. Canoe.
Canoe.
Can
But
you?
it's a...
I love his movies. He's
what I did
really
there?
good. That John Wick series that's out, Canoe Reeves, isn't it? No, that's something that's different.
Yes, but I will confess that I'm
Wow.
going to watch the Bill and Ted Part 3. I'm just going to do it. I'm not even
Bodie
gonna-
from Point Break is not happy with you.
You're gonna have to, right? Point Break. Yeah.
Oh, gosh, now I'm going to have to put notes on all of the Canoe Reeves movies in the episode.
So where does that leave us, guys? Where are we at in the discussion here?
I think you want to talk about maybe some of the strategies in Chapter 2.
Absolutely. Let's lay a little foundation. Many of you know this. Some of us may not. Some of us will pretend that we know this. We're going to take the first.
That's me.
Like, who are you taking a shot at in the room with you right now, Laurie? Because I too claim Braden nerd status.
I know you do. You're my cohort. Helping to simplify the first 2 hemispheres, the left and right hemispheres. For the sake of this and in the sake of Dan and Tina, they call it just the left and right brain. And so I think starting out, it's a great foundation for learning and educating ourselves on the differences between the left and the right brain. One of the easy ways to remember is left starts with L, so does legality and logic, literal thinking, lineal thinking, linguistics.
All the L words.
All
so
the
clever.
L and lists, as Dan and Tina said in the book. And so that's helpful because that's exactly how our left brain operates, is that I just use a list of alliterations with things that start with L, and that's
It's lovely.
thank you.
I see what you did there.
Thank you. And with our right brain, it's the exact opposite of those things. It's holistic, it's emotional, it's creative, it's reactive. And it doesn't care about any kind of lists. It's in the moment, right then and there. And I think having that understanding, for me personally, the simple understanding between those two have completely shifted the way that I view my own personal kiddos and the kiddos that I work with. Because when I can see the biological and neurological foundations, because it's science and there's data, it helps me to not take what I see coming out of that little brain personally.
Yeah.
Right? I don't have ownership over that anymore because it's a part of that makeup. It's a part of that child in a really, really anatomical sense rather than an emotional sense.
Yeah. One thing that I love about this book, my favorite quote of all time, and I have ranked my quotes, Shawn. You know, I'm the kind of person who'd rank my quotes.
Absolutely.
But my favorite quote of all time is by Maya Angelou. She says, do the best you can until you know better. And when you know better, do better. And I think this book is one of those books that helped me know better.
Right.
Yeah, and so, talking about the left brain, right brain a little bit, they talk in the book about the left brain is the letter of the law and the right brain is the spirit of the law.
Right.
The left brain provides content, the left brain provides context because we experience our feelings, right? We cannot downplay that. And so the left brain and the right brain have to work together for us to make sense of what's going on. A couple of interesting notes about the brain is that the right hemisphere of your brain is functioning in utero, and your left side of your brain comes online afterwards, right? So you can experience things in utero before you're born. That's why babies can feel their feelings, right? But they can't talk about their feelings,
right?
Because that part of their brain's not online yet. I mean, the physical structure's there; it's just not functioning correctly. And so this integration of the brain helps that neurotypical thing that Laurie was talking about. I do want to say though, and this isn't in the book, but for like a foster care audience where you might be dealing with some FASD kids. The part of your brain in the middle there, the corpus callosum, that actually communicates between the left brain and the right brain, fetal alcohol exposure either makes that communication very difficult, or not possible initially, right? I mean, it's basically like wading through a swamp, the communication. And so I want to say that when we can talk about integrating left brain, right brain, but the truth of the matter is, that might be more than just a 1, 2, 3 for some folks, right? You're going to have to, if you can't get your kid out of their command. So what's the strategy, right? You connect in the emotional place, and then you redirect them to a logical place. That's going to be hard for some of our kids in foster care,
right?
And so I want to caution folks who are listening that just because we said you got to connect in the emotional place and then come and then redirect them to a place of logic and reason. That is not going to be, how do I want to say this delicately? That's going to be really a really difficult process for some of the kiddos we're serving.
A challenge and maybe impossible in some ways, and not to say that there isn't another strategy that's going to work for you.
Yep.
But some strategies may be impossible because of the irreparable damage that FASD, fetal alcohol exposure, does in utero. There are lesions that never go away.
Yep.
And some of those are found on the corpus callosum, like you were talking
Yep.
about. Sometimes they're found in other parts of the brain, but it's being mindful and having just very realistic expectations that, okay, I'm going to give this a trial and error. I'm going to give it more than just a try, maybe more, 2 or 3 more times. And if it's not sinking in and taking root and you're not seeing the benefits of it, we just switch out that tool to another one. And hopefully we're putting tools. That's just exactly what we're doing in this time together, is putting more tools in your tool bag.
Yeah. So can I tell a story about left brain, right brain integration? Hopefully that makes the point.
Absolutely.
I was hoping that you would.
So our daughter, she's about 3.5, 4 years old in the story. And so they're running in the house, and I know everybody tells the kids not to run in the house. And by the way, when your child is running in the house and trips and falls and whacks their head into the wall and they're crying, that is actually not the time you tell them not to run in the house.
That's not?
No, you have to connect and then redirect. We're just redirecting.
Connect, like you reach out and touch them and tell them,
connect emotionally.
don't run in the house.
Emotionally.
And physically.
And physically. But here, so the story actually plays out both of those scenarios.
Okay.
So she's running, she stumbles and she trips and hits her head in the side of the wall at my wife's grandmother's house. And so she's crying, and so my mother-in-law picks her up. She's like the first person on the scene, and picks her up, and it does the sort of the bouncing thing, the patting of the back, and saying, "There, you're okay." And at the time, I watched that and thought, "Oh my gosh, that's not helpful to her," because I was so smart. Well, I think wisdom is intellect peppered with experience. I think wisdom is born out of that. I just think being smart doesn't make you wise.
No.
Right? You can be smart and not be wise. I was smart but not wise is, I think, what I'm confessing to. And if anybody forwards this episode of my mother-in-law, we're no longer friends. She cannot hear that I've confessed to this. Anyhow, so she's doing it. And I remember one of the things that Karen Purvis said early on that really connected with me. She said, there's nothing special about what we're doing. We're just remembering the way our grandmothers treated us, and we're doing it like that.
Right.
And so watching grandma, because she's giving all the sensory input the child needs, right?
Right.
There's the vestibular, there's the proprioceptive, there's the tactile, and all that stuff going on. And so I said, hey, let me try. And so I asked, so I'm like, oh, baby, I'm sorry that you're hurt. Are you okay? And, the crying. And so put her in my lap and hold her close. And so now I feel like we've connected. She knows there's empathy coming from all of us around her. And I said, what happened? And then she gives some version, I fell and hit my head. But it's almost not audible because she's still crying. And I said, why were you running? And she gave me a little bit of a more cohesive answer. She sort of crying, and I said, how can we make sure you don't get hurt again? I don't remember the exact questions there were, but they're who, what, where, when, how, and why. Rudyard Kipling, the author, said those are his six friends that taught him everything he ever learned, because you cannot answer who, what, where, when, how, and why with a yes or a no. It actually requires you to find words. And so if we just kept asking those questions of her once we'd connected emotionally, that was the process by which we redirected her over to her left side of her brain, because that's where the words live. So she has to go over there to fetch the words. And over time, her pain hadn't subsided, but her response to the pain had changed some, because we were literally moving the focus from the right side of her brain over to the left side of the brain by just asking her questions that she had to answer in some version of a sentence.
Yeah.
It's interesting. This is just kind of a side note. I've read some research within the last couple of years that said those W questions, those direction questions can actually increase cortisol in a traumatized brain. So I think it's really interesting. I'm curious of when we are asking those questions with our kiddos. I think that time and the moment in that situation has a lot of weight to how we do that, right? And so your first step was the connect. You were connecting. It sounded like the grandmother connected right brain to right brain. Yep. And your daughter at 3-4 was sad, hurt, frustrated, probably a little bit of embarrassment for falling, feeling painful, and the connection of the right brain was, I've got you, you're safe in my arms, shh, everything's going to be okay, right? The sensory needs are being met. Yep. That whole feeling and emotiveness of it all was just being met, and to a point where it was met and satiated so that we could do that left brain conversation. So I say that just kind of putting a little pin, be mindful of when we're asking those questions, especially if we have kiddos from a traumatic background in our homes, and we may not get the same answers that Ryan's little one offered.
Yeah, so I think it's really important what you said, because that highlights the fact that we have to connect first. You have to connect with that left brain the right brain emotional response first. Otherwise, you're not going to get any of those good things that you want out of that left brain. So, along with my favorite drawing, Shawn, instead of command and demand, which is probably the way most of us are raised, which means is how most of us respond under pressure, you got to leave command and demand behind and go for the connect and redirect. And I told that story. It's one of my favorite stories because it actually, I think, illustrates both of the strategies in this chapter. And that is, the strategy number 2 is name it to tame it. We were able, as part of that, moving her from her right brain to her left brain, get her to tell the story about what had actually happened. And so that had some therapeutic level. It's why talk therapy still, after 150 years or whatever, that it was canonized by Freud. But we also know that the Bible says, confess your sins one to another, right? There's this therapeutic element in that, and talking about stuff. And that's kind of what I love about brain science, is it confirms a lot of stuff that I already learned because I read a book called The Bible. And I'm not saying that, and I just want to maybe tap the brakes here a little bit.
Who wrote that?
Some guy named Paul.
Paul wrote.
He was one. Many.
Collaborative effort.
It was a collaborative effort over a period of time. Okay. But I mentioned Paul like that because I think there's so much in what he wrote that it gives sort of like whispers of what neuroscience is discovering, right? We just talked about how your brain's malleable. We just talked about how it can be regenerated. We just talked how it can be changed. But he wrote in Romans how you are about, the renewing of your mind. I'm sorry, I stumbled on the verse, but he talked about the renewing of your mind. He talked about, in Deuteronomy, because Siegel actually talks about it in this book, in maybe a subsequent chapter, about this, how they, at the end of every day around the table, they talk about the day, like one good thing that happened, one bad thing that happened, one kind thing you did for somebody, right? And it reminded me of that verse in Deuteronomy where Moses talks about, in your rising and you're sleeping and you're going out and coming back in, talk to your children, tell the stories and stuff like that. And so a lot of those things, those biblical things that I learned in Sunday school, the neuroscientists are writing about them and basically confirming is not the right word, because God didn't need a neuroscientist to confirm what he said, but
coming into fruition.
Yeah, and so now science is discovering something that was written down thousands of years ago, because people are people, and that's why I kind of geek out on neuroscience, because it helps me understand. So God created the brain, right? And so these guys can now, and these men and women can now explain this thing that God created to me better than I'd ever understood before. And that's part of why I just love hearing about the brain.
Absolutely. So in chapter 2, and we've been talking about it, I don't know that we've actually named it explicitly yet, but there are 2 strategies that are presented. And in chapter 2, the book talks a lot about the 2 hemispheres, the 2 brains, and the importance, the need to reconnect, or not reconnect, but to connect them together. These 2 strategies listed in chapter 2, I think, are specifically designed to make that happen, right?
Yes.
And so we've talked a little bit about, oh gosh, I'm gonna have to pull a little bit closer here, guys. Sorry, my eyes are not what they used to be. But connect and reconnect, surfing emotional waves, and then name it, tame it, telling stories to calm big emotions. And I know we talked a lot about, I feel like we talked about connecting, and the redirecting piece I think is important, though, because I recall, and I don't have as good of a recall as you guys do with regards to specific pages and that sort of thing, but there's an idea in here that redirecting is not distraction, right? It's not in the context of what they're talking about in the book. Redirection is guiding towards making the connection between the 2 hemispheres. It's not in the behavioral sense that we sometimes talk about. Well, I use redirection as a strategy to control my child's behavior, right? It's not, hey, look at this shiny object over here, so they'll stop doing what they're doing.
It's not falling off the bike and going, ow, and picking your kid up and going, honey, I'm so sorry that happened. Okay, go play.
Right.
Go back, or let's get you some ice cream because you're sad.
Yeah, I was just thinking the ice cream. Oh, yeah, you're sad. Have ice
feed
cream.
your emotions.
Yeah. Or with the toddlers, where it's like, you see them pick up a marker, and you're looking at your sofa going, oh my God, everything goes in slow-mo. And so you grab like the remote control and you're like, we're gonna exchange these, right? Like that's not the redirection that's being spoken about here. It's a little more intentional.
Right. Yeah, there's no smoke and mirrors involved here.
Right.
Because, it's funny you mentioned the ice cream, because I was thinking a lot of times we do that, though, in parenting. If you'll just stop ice cream, I'll stop crying and get some ice cream kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Fee for service.
What you end up with, though, is people who eat their feelings. So I can only assume this is the message of my childhood, because when I'm stressed, I eat.
Yeah. There's the potential for that to be the outcome.
Yes.
Not all the time, right?
Okay. Miss Fungi weighs in with a disclaimer. Yes, I absolutely agree with that. There is the potential for that, right? There's also the potential to have somebody who will have a lifelong struggle with their weight.
Right.
And all of those things. And let's just avoid those things, because I know it's easier giving ice cream, but we're not actually solving any issues by giving ice cream. We're just shoving it back there, because you're going to deal with it now. Somebody's going to deal with it later.
Mm-hmm. Right. And we go back to parenting styles and attachment styles, and that's a really dismissive approach. And so I think the first part in venturing in this book and in your walk with us is we just plead with you to have an open mind and an open heart and a goal or a desire for some self-awareness. So it's one thing to say, I want to put tools in my bag, but it's another thing to say, I want to learn and stretch and grow within myself as I put tools in my bag.
So good.
And so giving yourself the permission to say, ooh, you know what, that wasn't done for me, and I don't really know what that looks like. The hope is that this book helps illustrate some of what that looks like, right, but also getting to mourn that wasn't done for you.
Yeah, I think that the message, there's a handful of really consistent messages, I think, that come through in every episode. And one of those is, it's okay to be sad. We tell our children that it's okay to be sad, it's okay to be mad. You're entitled to your feelings, but we as parents have to realize we're entitled to our feelings too.
Amen.
And trying to make sense of your past. A lot of people avoid it because, and at least this is the feedback we've gotten, right? People avoid that because they think that somehow that means that their mother or father is going to be unhappy with them. And that's not true. Or somehow thinks that you're going to end up hating your parents. That's not true either.
Right.
You just end up being like a happier person.
Because you made sense of it.
Right. And so I love the way they talk about that making sense in the book. And so I actually wrote this quote down because it was so good. Because making sense of that is like building a puzzle. Right? And they said, when you tell the story about what happened to you, the puzzle piece, and put the puzzle pieces together, you feel less scared, sad, and angry. You also feel braver, calmer, and happier. And that's why that using the story, the second strategy, which I don't remember exactly what it is, but it's talking about the story component of that, is that if we can actually take kids to a place where they feel
Name it to tame it.
less sad, less scared, and less angry, and replace that with braver, calmer, and happier, I don't know a single parent who won't make that deal.
Right.
But that's work.
But if you're going to make that deal with your kiddos, you've got to make it to yourself.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Right?
Preach, sister.
I get really
I feel like you
animated
should have
about
said,
this.
can I get a witness?
Can I get a witness?
Testify.
Woo!
Tell 'em.
Arms raised high. Let's go.
Tell them.
A mental note, we need an organist for the next episode.
I get really animated about this because my heart goes out to the kiddos just as much as my heart goes out to you. And I want to love on you from afar, and I want to care deeply for you from afar. And I don't want to do that more for you than you're willing to do for yourself. I'm more than happy to love and care for you. And I hope that you take that same desire of yourself upon yourself. And I hope that you find this place of loving yourself and caring for yourself, because the moment that you do is the moment that you are truly fully equipped to be able to carry that out for your kiddos.
So this is one the making sense thing. And if people, the list of things that come up every episode here, I think are probably the 5 or 6 things that we're in complete lockstep on, in agreement. This is one of them. We all know that the Bible says the truth shall set you free. But it's like our pastor says, if you find a verse you like, you should probably read the rest of the chapter. Just to make sure you understand the verse you like.
Back up a couple of sentences and get a running start at it.
Along in that vein, Shawn, do you know what it says just before the truth shall set you free?
No.
The truth shall be known. In order for the truth to set you free, it has to be known. And that's that process we're talking about, right? If you really want to be set free, you have to deal with the reality of what has happened in the past. That's why the telling of the story is so beautiful. And if we can coach our kids to process their feelings and tell that story when they're 6, 7, 8, 12, whatever age they are, and we start doing this in our homes, it's not just that your home becomes a more peaceful place. It's that you've changed the trajectory of their life and set them up to be healthier adults, which then allows them to help other people be healthier adults. And you've just changed a lot of things for the good with these 2 simple things that these very smart people are talking about.
Absolutely. Have you? I don't think it came from this book, but I've heard another way of saying this is, what's shareable is bearable. Have you heard that?
I have.
Is that Purvis?
I don't know that that's Purvis.
It's not Purvis. It might be Forbes, other Forbes. I don't know. I've heard that somewhere. But it plays out like 1,000 times in every office place in America, right? We as adults, we call it venting. But it's that the idea that if we can just find somebody that we can tell this story to, it's going to alleviate what's happening in here and help this lateral, horizontal communication happen in the brain.
And so I know this isn't necessarily, not necessarily, it is not part of this chapter. We're going to get it subsequently, but I feel like I should just tack something onto that, Shawn. It's why it's the one that's so valuable, because these things that are locked back in the recesses of our minds in sort of the emotional and reactive places, being able to talk about them kind of brings them forward, right?
That's right.
And that's the value of therapy. And I'm a big proponent of, I've even suggested we should have a staff therapist. Like somebody on the office door is always open during business hours, and you need to go talk to somebody, because venting's good.
So I'm getting tired of playing the part.
Venting's good. I think you violated.
Lori wants to access that person too.
It's like, I need help, darn it. And none of y'all are helping me. But venting's good. Venting to somebody who can actually help you make sense of that, who is trained and experienced, is better.
Absolutely. Well, and this is what's so fascinating to me. I'm a huge history buff, specifically World War II, even more specific, the European theater. And so reading books about soldiers and how what they endured, everything from Germany and even going over to Japan as well, just looking at World War II as a whole and the military and the soldiers. And I always kind of wondered their ability to work through everything that they saw. What they saw, war is horrendous regardless, but I feel as though there's a shift of the resiliency seen in that era versus the horrible numbers and statistics of suicide that we know now with the present wars going on. And I see this chasm, and I became very curious about it. And studies show there's a myriad of other components, but the one that stood out for me was back then you were on a ship for months at a time. You were on a plane for months at a time going from different destinations. And in that time, the organic discourse was the great opportunity to happen. You had time and availability to talk to other people about what you encountered. Yes, I just got shot down and landed in the heart of Germany and hid for 3 weeks, and you're getting on a plane going back and you have a flat fellow mate to swap stories with, right? And because of the ease of technology now, the time that it takes to get from country to country is much less than it was 50, 60, 70 years ago. Well, and I just think that's fascinating to me.
It's why I think that post-traumatic stress disorder is something that gets diagnosed after working with guys coming back from the Vietnam War. Mm-hmm. But the British had something that they classified as shell shock, which is the same thing after the First World War. Yeah. Because those guys only had to take a couple of hours boat ride across the English Channel to be back home and didn't have that you're talking about. And so it is interesting that when we start airlifting troops out of war zones as opposed to bringing them home by boat, those people's ability to integrate back into normal society changes to the negative when they've missed out in that experience.
Well, and the bottom line is we got to talk. We got to tell our story. We
talk
share.
all the time into microphones. Nobody got to tell us we got to talk.
We talk, we type, we text, we socialize. Guys, I think we're coming near the end of the time frame that we were hoping to hit, maybe even a little bit longer. I want to give each of you a chance, though, to kind of throw out kind of one last thought with regards to this, if you have it, and then we'll talk just a little bit about what we're doing next time.
Sure. I'll just kind of couple with the importance of talking. Many of our kiddos, as a therapist, I even have the best clients struggle with sitting in my office and just openly talking. And so we incorporate movement. Movement, what we know is movement activates the left brain, and when the left brain is activated, so is language. And so you have more of an opportunity to be vocal when you're in movement. And so my practical application for you guys is take your kids to the park and stand behind them and push them on the swing set. Go for a car ride just for the fun of it. Most times that's when we hear some of the worst stories and some of the best stories from our kiddos, is because they're not expected to maintain that eye contact and feel the pressure of trying to uphold a conversation. Go for a walk, play ball, play football, kick the soccer ball around, get moving, and I think that you'll be really surprised of how much your kiddos are willing to share about their stories.
Yeah, so my closing thought would be back to the riverbanks, that if the kids are in a place of chaos, do not join them in the chaos.
Right.
Don't drag them to the rigidity, but
Right.
invite them into the calm. Mm-hmm. I think that if you can remember that, you might have a shot at doing better, because I think most of us just join the kids in the chaos.
Yeah.
When it's loud, I have
Absolutely.
to be louder so they know I'm in charge.
Right. Yeah. Like you're trying to trump each other with your rigidity.
Yes.
Oh, you could be hard, huh? Watch how hard
this.
I can be.
You ain't seen nothing yet, son.
Your grandparents were way harder than you, and they taught me.
I feel like there was a therapy moment right there.
So, guys, and so my closing thought is similar to, I think, my closing thought every time, and that is just, there's there's not a single event in any of this that makes or breaks the whole deal, right? It's a culmination, it's a story, it's a journey. You're building this life together. View it from that perspective. Don't throw the towel in because of even a series of events. In the grand scheme of things, when you're looking back on your life at the end of it, some of these moments are just not even going to be there. So regardless of which side of the river you're on and what point they're at and so on and so forth, you're in it together. You're in the same river. You're all really working towards the same goals. And I think that's an important way to view it.
Absolutely.
So next time around, we're going to try to, I have to put my glasses on here for just a second. Sorry, I stepped away from the mic for a second there. So chapter 3 is what we're going to try to tackle this next time. Okay. And it's building the staircase of the mind, integrating the upstairs and the downstairs brain. Did you know that you have a loft in your brain, Ryan?
I call it the attic.
Yeah. I mean, we're both brain geeks. I'm like, are you serious right now? I did.
I should have. Hold on. Sorry, I'll look into the camera. Did you know that you have a loft in your brain and apparently a basement, and it may be unfinished?
True story.
I have no idea
Testify.
what that means whatsoever. But the strategies we'll look at there: engage, don't engage, appealing to the upstairs brain, use it or lose it, exercising the upstairs brain, and move it or lose it. I like to move it. We're gonna have to don't sing too much. We don't want to get.
Why he shut you down? So, if you could not sing,
that was a correct. We didn't even connect yet.
He was just command and demand. Don't sing.
It was a command.
I'm a work in progress, Lori.
Practice, Shawn.
That's
Come
fine.
on.
Why do you think I read these books?
And as we learned in chapter 1 today, your brain is malleable.
It is malleable. I can learn. Don't give up on me yet.
I won't.
Wait at least another week. And
We'll see.
Guys, thanks so much for listening. Be sure to spread the word. We really do want to grow our impact, our ability to reach folks in need, and the best way to do that is word of mouth. We try to put things out there in advertisements and this and that and the other, but the best way is by you talking to the folks around you and saying, hey, you got to check this thing out. That Ryan North guy's got a lot of good points, and so does that Lori Fungi. I'm not so sure about that Shawn Wilson guy, but whatever.
That's the actual review I wrote on iTunes.
Was that you? I knew that was you. Bob Marley?
That's right.
But yeah, so thanks so much, guys. Thanks for listening. Share it, get it out there. We'll look forward to bringing you another episode in a couple of weeks, and get into that Facebook group that we've got set up. Discuss with us on these ideas, and let us know what you'd like for us to talk about in the future after this series is over. Thanks.
Looking forward to it.
Bye-bye.